All right, so I would like to show you some thoughts I have about how you could use reading A to Z resources to support students with leveled reading. And this is definitely not a substitute for guided reading. As we know, the challenge of doing that remotely is really significant. And so I wanted to make a couple of resources available to you and help you think through how you could do this asynchronously, so that you're meeting district expectations and meeting your students' needs and doing it in a way that's still delivering good, high quality instruction and pedagogy that we know works well for students. So when you get into reading A to Z, you're going to go to resources. And then here you can see leveled texts. So we're going to go into all leveled books, and I'll show you a book that I chose earlier. We're going to click on level J, and I'm also going to click on nonfiction. And then we'll see what comes up. I'm looking for an ocean book. And let's see. Here it is, Ocean Animals. So let's click on that one. And I'll just give you the lay of the land real quickly here, and I'll show you how we can, again, translate some of this information into some work that's going to be good for students. Okay, so some of the resources that we have here that are going to be good for you to know. With reading A to Z, you can use the RAsKids Portal, which I'll toggle over here. It looks like this. This is the one my daughter is using for her school, and it's kidsatz.com. And if she clicks in the reading section here, and here she goes to the section that says level up, it actually takes her to kind of her little library she has here. You can see reading books from levels J through K. This is the area that she's working on. And these are the books that her teacher has selected for her to read. And you can see here that it gives her three options when she clicks on a book. She can listen to the book being read to her, she can read the book herself, and then once she's done those things, she can actually answer some questions, just basic kind of more recall level comprehension questions, but it's still a good check, for students to do. And I encourage you to do that and make use of that resource for them, because at least you can assign them texts that you know they can read. And these would be texts that are definitely at the independent level. This isn't really the time to give students anything too challenging. We know that kids are dealing with a lot right now, and really in the absence of, really responsive instruction, students just need to be maintaining the skills that they have. That's really what we're aiming for. We're not aiming to advance or progress students' skills. I think that's just too much to ask of students and teachers right now, and frankly of their parents as well, because most of them are not teachers themselves. So if we can help students maintain their reading levels, much like we hope that students will maintain over the summer, I think that would be a really good place for us to be in right now. So again, once she reads all these three things, she earns these little stars up here, and I think she gets to cash them in and do, some activity or something with them. So those are great options. But this way you can see, here's the Ocean Animals book down here that we were just talking about. So let's actually click on the part where the student would actually read. And you can see down here, there's a little next arrow, and she just gets to click and advance through. There's the words to know, which actually comes up in some of the lessons. And then she can read the book herself and click all the way through and that kind of thing. There's also some tools up here in the right corner that you might want to explore, different highlighting features, and she can actually add comments and write a little journal. There may be some good assignments or tools you want students to try to use to communicate with you, and you might want to communicate with them about what they're reading. So to use a book like this in a lesson, I'm going to show you how I might set this up so that a student like Natalie, who's reading a level like this, could actually make good use of the materials that are in Reading A to Z, since you do have access to them for free. The problem is that just like all these other materials that we're used to using, they're really not designed to be used independently by students. They're designed to be facilitated by a live teacher. So I'll show you ways that we can modify that. So let's toggle back here over to Reading A to Z again. And over here on the left-hand side, you can see it's really clear when it's a PDF version of the book. And then here's the projectable version. Sometimes that's nice to have if you're going to do things like screenshots and things. So I'll show you that in a moment. And then here we have the lesson resources that go with the book. And this, I believe this one here gives you all the lesson resources. But if you scroll down, you can actually see, yeah, like here's all the worksheets that you might want to print. And then, of course, they have them listed separately as well. But it just gives you a sense of what is included here. And again, that's all free for you to use. Now, let's go over here. I have all of the lesson pieces pulled up. And I'll show you the things that I decided to use when I created the lesson I created, and I'll show you the lesson in a moment. So here's what the PDF looks like. This is called the Leveled Book Lesson. And here's what it looks like. So it's nice they put a photo of the book, so it's really easy for us to keep track and the level we're working with. And it tells you, again, what to do before guided reading and after and all these things. Well, again, we're not doing guided reading. We're really trying to just do leveled reading practice is the best we can really hope for right now. So I went ahead and highlighted the things that I decided to feature in the asynchronous lesson that I designed. So I did choose to focus on the comprehension skill that they suggested, which was main idea and details. The vocabulary, I focused on the word community, which was in one of those words to know that we saw in the very beginning of the book. And I used that to focus on a key text-dependent question, which was this highlighted one here: how are the animals that live in the ocean part of a community? And what I really like about these lessons is how they show you we've got level 1 questions, level 2, level 3. So you can really decide based on the student, based on the time of year, their reading level, their maturity level, their language level, all sorts of reasons why you might choose different questions to ask. I would limit how many questions because, again, you're not there to facilitate the answer and help fill in the gaps for students. I think 1 or 2 questions is plenty because really we're asking kids to write their answer instead of say it. At least the way I designed it in the lesson. So I think we can limit that. And that's one of the reasons why I chose a level 3 question, because I thought, let's actually get something kind of meaty in there and see what a level J can do. I also decided to use the graphic organizer skill review part. Again, that reinforces main idea and details, and I'll show you how I made that interactive. And then I also chose to use the phonics piece where they talk about the consonant digraph, SH, the sh sound. And I'll show you an activity I created based on their suggestions of words here, and again, how I made that interactive. So let's go over to Google Slides, and you can see how I've set this up. Now, I just decided in the file name to put the name of the text and then label this as reading activities. So this is not where the students would actually read the book. I would expect them to go into the Kids A to Z or RAsKids or whatever we're calling it, and actually read the book in that platform. And then I can assign them this slide deck full of reading activities. And that way, in their Google Classroom, it really limits the number of, kind of resources and clicks and materials they have to manage. So if I was going to assign this, I would first put in the link to RAsKids that they need, their login link. And then the second thing I would put in is the slide deck, and then I would assign it. So I'm really in favor, especially of our K3 students, and especially the youngest for sure, particularly the K1 or any child who is new to navigating online, that kind of thing. I think it's a great idea to put everything in one document. In this case, I think Google Slides is a great tool because of its flexibility, because it handles images, it handles text, and it's very easy to manipulate, much easier than a Google Doc would be, and definitely more flexible than a Google Form, although those have their place as well. They're excellent tools. But I'm in favor of putting as much as possible into one spot. So I designed this slide deck for you, and I'm going to make it available in a PDF. There'll be a link in there. You can copy it to your own Google Drive. And this, I think, can be used as a template as you move forward if you choose to do so with these. I think it'll save you a lot of time if you have a template to start from. And then, of course, with every text, there's all these different opportunities for how you might use that with students. And again, having a template to go off of will be a great structure for you. And I think it'll help you manage and not be asking too much or too little of students. And of course, I made this for a very hypothetical student, and your kids. And so you can definitely, make those adjustments as needed. The other thing that's great about having a slide deck here that's all, in one spot based on one text is that you can really divide and conquer assignments like these with your fellow teacher. So if you are, a third grade teacher or you're a reading intervention person, if whoever you're collaborating with to create lessons for your grade level, for, whichever students you're serving, I think it's a great idea to divide and conquer lessons like these. So if everybody has a template to operate from, whether it's this one or one that you create, and then each of you takes a text, or each of you takes a certain, level of text or something, and, once a week or twice a week, you create a little slide deck like this, pretty soon you've got a lot to choose from, and you can push those out to different students depending on their reading level. So I think it's a very doable way to do this. And there's a lot of activities in here. I don't think this is something that kids should be doing in one sitting. I think this is a slide deck that could be used for the entire week. Because if you remember, kids are having to listen to the book, they're reading the book, and they're answering those comprehension questions. That's a lot unto itself. That takes at least 20 minutes to do. And then if they come over to the slide deck, now we're asking them to respond and do a lot more thinking with it. So I think there's plenty to do here for an entire week of reading. So in the template here, I like to put as often as possible the image, because then students can see if this picture matches the text that they actually read in RAsKids, because there's going to be some kid who reads the wrong book and then gets the wrong assignment and gets mixed up. So it makes it a little bit easier. I don't love that they put the level of the book on here. As you can see, I choose not to put that information in the assignment at all. I just put the title. But there you go, there it is. So again, I have this picture here. I like to put directions on the actual Google slide, but if you'll notice down here, I also like to put a couple in here that just reiterate what's going on here. Often I rephrase them, because if my students have trouble with one set of directions, maybe the other set will help them. I try to write them in more kid-friendly language, and I know some of the language is going to be too challenging for some students to read on their own. But we're doing the best we can, and we're hoping that there's some adult or older student nearby, a stronger reader, who may be able to support them, at least in following the basic directions on the slides. I also like to put the directions down here in a very bright color, so that students will notice them. A lot of times as we know, you can hide the slide notes feature. And so if it's not on there, kids might not even realize they should be looking for that. So again, nice to put directions here and then follow up with some more here. So in this first slide for the template, all you'd have to do is switch out the photo, because the directions would be the same no matter which book you chose. So first you want to say find the book on RAsKids or Kids A to Z, however you want to refer to that with your students. I also recommend putting the link right in there, again, so that they can just click right in. I told them first to listen to the book, read the book, answer the questions. So I just did screenshots and cropped those and tossed them in. And then finally I say, then return to this file and finish the activity, so that they know there's only those two places they need to go. Once students have done all this reading, again, that represents really the first day, then they can move on to some of these other activities. And if you remember in the lesson plan, one of the vocabulary words or words to know was community. So I went ahead and defined that directly from the text. They have a glossary in the back. So I brought that forward for students, a group of plants and animals that live together. I took a screenshot of where that actually occurs in the text, because in the lesson over here, in the text-dependent question, it will actually tell you exactly which page it belongs. In this case, it says multiple pages, so I just chose one that appeared early on, just to jog students' memory. You can put more than one picture on there if you want to do that, if you think that supports students. But I do encourage you, if there's a specific question that matches a specific page, put the page right in there and just make it easier for students to do everything they need to do in that one location, and they don't have to go back and forth between programs. I think the least amount of time they do that, the better. So the question from the lesson plan was, how are the animals that live in the ocean part of a community? And then we have a type your answer here. So I really want to make sure that my younger students know how to actually find the text box and things. So often what I'll do here is outline it so that kids can see very clearly this is where the typing happens. You might want to do that for some of your students who are unfamiliar with that. Of course, that's your choice. And the font I have here is pretty big, because I know I'm trying to use big font, because as this appears on the screen in this style of slide, sometimes it can be hard to read if it's really small. So again, directions down here are slightly different than what they sometimes see on the slide. So once students have answered that, I think, again, that's a lot to think about. I think it's a challenging question with a new word. And it may actually, students may want to go back and refer to the book. And that requires, again, toggling back and forth between programs. I think they can handle it once they get used to it, especially with a little bit of support. But I think this is a great question for them to answer. And this gives you evidence of their thinking, which really should be the priority for us right now. Again, we're maintaining skills, but if we keep students thinking and expressing that thinking, then we're really doing our jobs in helping them maintain the gains they've already made this year. After they do that slide, the next one moves into that main idea and details, which was the comprehension focus suggested by the lesson plan. So I defined main idea a few different ways and details a few different ways. Again, reinforce this is the book we're talking about and that here's the main idea of the text. Now, the lesson plan actually tells you that's the main idea. So I just took that verbatim and put it on there. And here's the directions, read to find out about main idea. So just read this and think through that a little bit. Then that helps students set up for this task, which was one of the worksheets you can download from the Reading A to Z. And again, reinforcing main idea. Here's the main idea again. I didn't think this was going to be really clear for students. I think they could easily miss that. So that's one of the reasons why I decided to make it really big and different colors here to kind of force them to address that. Then the students can actually, again, go ahead and type in each of these spots some of the details that they find. Now, this definitely requires them to go back into the text. So that, again, that's going back to the other program. But for some of the kids, they will remember some of the things on their own. So it shouldn't be too much, especially you're reading a level J, which is the end of first grade. And that's moving into much longer text, less picture support. And those are students ready to transition to some of the easier chapter books that start out in second grade. So that's definitely an on-grade level first grade reader. So a student reading at that level should be able to recall at least some of the details that they read in the text and try to type them out. But that's a way to actually use the resources that are in those files. Now I'll show you in a different video how to actually get a PDF version of something onto a slide like this, and then you add the text boxes to type. I have a great little video I'll be sharing with you about that so that you can see how to do that with any of your files. And then finally, the last activity I chose from the lesson plan was that phonics piece where they practiced the SH digraph. So words with the sh sound, I'm clearly indicating the SH sound in the different color. With each time, here's some directions, drag the SH sound to finish each word and read the words. And then here's, again, slightly different directions. So what students are doing here is they're just literally dragging and completing the word. And then once they're done, they read the word. I chose to outline these boxes because I wanted students to understand that this was actually, one piece they needed to move. For some students, they're not used to doing that. They don't maybe have some computer literacy skills that our other students have. So I thought anytime you want to indicate that something is a unit like that or is a place to type, sometimes it's a good idea to outline that box. So if you really look through, we've taken parts of this big lesson plan here, and we've pulled out the pieces that I think are reasonable for a level J to think through. We're promoting the thinking and the processing and the strategic actions that we want them to take. We're doing it in bite-sized pieces. We're not talking about every vocab word, just one vocab word. We chose one well-crafted question. We're reinforcing the concept again with the graphic organizer practice piece, and we threw in the phonics piece that they also suggest. The words that I got from the or on the slide are actually taken directly from this file. So a lot of times they have suggestions for you. Just take those suggestions and use them. Don't feel like you have to come up with new, word work and phonics pieces for every little thing. There's plenty of good suggestions in these files. And your job is to really pull out what you think is the most manageable for a student to do as independently as possible. And that translates well or as well as possible to an asynchronous or remote situation like this. So hopefully that was helpful to you. Again, this is a free resource that you have access to. After this video, there will be a PDF that follows it. And if you click on that, I'll have links to this particular slide deck, and it'll ask you to copy it to your drive. And that way you can copy it and just build off of it, and of course, improve upon it, and I swap out different texts and things. So hopefully if you collaborate together with some of your grade level partners and other folks, you can really, have a set of robust lessons that you can use. And it's something really to think about, because we're not really sure what school is going to look like in the fall. So there may be some components where we still have to do some remote teaching and learning. So the more of this kind of stuff we do now, it will support students later if that's the scenario. But these also can be great for homework practice for kids who are going on independent study, or they're out for health reasons for a while, or they can also become literacy centers that students do. So your work will not be wasted. And it is helpful for us to think through some of these things together to help one another out. So download that PDF and get access to this for your Google Drive.